Okay, guys, this is a hand video because I'm going to be pointing out the use of this device right here, the keyboard. Yes, I'm not going to tell you how to type. You can hunt and peck, or you can type or do some weird combination therein like I do. But what I'm talking about is dealing with command line interfaces. And command line interfaces use the keyboard and the keyboard only. There's mouse involved, but that's for cutting and pasting and convenience. Command line environments don't normally pay any attention to this device here. It goes back to the days when keyboards and computers, we just did everything through the keyboard, and this didn't exist. Okay, it did exist, but what's on the bottom definitely wasn't this little laser LED. It was rolly balls and physical items that nobody really liked. Plus, you could take the keyboard and set it in your lap and sit back and relax and type all you wanted, but those days are gone. Not that it's completely that bad. The innovations that come around with this keyboard and the modern command line are things that you should know. Otherwise, you're going to struggle. I watch my students type. I watch my students go through command line interfaces in their labs, and it is the most painful thing to watch in some cases. All right, so first off, to demonstrate a little bit of the past is the worst. Going back to the days of 8-bit computing, no, I'm not digging out my 8-bit computer from the shed, hooking it up and all that. I'm going to demonstrate it with emulators. But going back to the days of 8-bit computing, command line was pretty much what you had. You did have arrow keys in some of the operating systems where you could go back and edit the last line. You did have some features to help you speed things up. But in general, you just typed what you wanted, pressed enter, and kept going, and then went for the results. All right, so in PowerShell, doing a change directory, use the change directory command to change directory. And if I want to look at the folder that I'm going to, I can use the tab key to let it pick. Now, the tab key is the greatest thing since the command line or command history. And you'd hit the tab key, and it allows you to either auto-complete what you're typing, or in most of your operating systems, it will try to auto-complete file names. For instance, going into my OneDrive. And if there's more than one thing that'll match it, for instance here, I could hit CC&A and I can hit the tab key again. Depending on the operating system, does different things. Windows will choose the next one. Now, in Linux, it might list everything else, but we'll see that in a moment. So next, we'll go into some other files. So you can also use it to kind of hunt around for it. So if you're not quite sure where it is or what it is, you can go through. Also notice that Windows is putting it in quotes. So now I'm into the folder I want to be in. So now I want to take a look at what's in there. So I'll list the contents of the directory, and then I will go ahead and get a file hash for the two files here. And also notice I typed it partially and hit tab, and it would complete that entry. This is something that's kind of nice in PowerShell that you can't do in, say, command line or with command line. Well, you can with the programs, but not completely in command line. It even will autocomplete the options or the dash options, which is very nice. PowerShell really takes advantage of the tab key and the way you can use it to autocomplete. So if you don't know what the options are, or you don't know what the command switches are, you can still use the tab. So here I can choose MD5 as my hashing algorithm, and then of course have it hash the hello commands. Of course, the autocomplete picks a little bit much, so back off, make it an asterisk. There we go. Now, the other thing that's great is to use the command history. Now, for command history, you just hit the up arrow, or in some operating systems, not Windows though, you could use things like Control P if you don't have an up arrow. But you can back off, make changes, use the arrow keys to edit. This is really good if you've made a mistake. Don't retype the whole thing once you've seen your mistakes. Go back and change it. Or, like, I just want to run the same command with a little change, like I just did here. So, what about Linux? In Linux, we have the same thing. We can use the change directory command and use the tab key to auto-complete things. Just like that. Now, the other thing we can do is during commands. Now, unfortunately, it's not as great with command line items unless they happen to be things in the folder you're in or in the path. Sometimes it will autocomplete certain commands because they are file names. But in Linux, it generally autocompletes file names. So, but when you push it once, it'll kind of complete as far as it can, but it may not be able to complete all the way. Now, if you press tab again, it's just going to show you the options that can come in just to kind of help you type in the next character to help finish it. So I can choose the one I want. Of course, if I want both, I could use a wildcard and get the key there. And then, of course, I could also go ahead, use the up arrow, go into history, and make changes to do something a little different. Okay, now finally, Cisco command line. Now, you can go ahead and do normal commands. I can auto-complete commands. I can auto-complete, well, for the most part, commands are the only thing you really can auto-complete in there with the tab key. And some words like ping, yeah, fairly good. But you still have the edit the command line. So pinging something, it's not working. So let's go ahead and correct that. IP addresses look fine. Of course, in Cisco's command line, you can abbreviate things too. But the fact that there's no default gateway on this router, which is why I can't reach the machine I want to. And you do have to watch what you're doing so that if you mistake and don't enter it in right, you never actually get the command you want. But you can still edit and correct things. So putting in the route I want, making lots of typos and mistakes, but including making the one. So if you make mistakes like this one, you can go back and use the history to make little corrections in here. So putting in the right default gateway, removing the old one, and Cisco, instead of using things like home and end, you have Control A and Control E, which also work in most Linux prompts, by the way, to go back and forth. But Windows doesn't follow those conventions because, well, in Windows, they know you have a home and an end key. In the Linux Cisco, it goes back to kind of an older style of terminal emulation, because really what we're using in these terminals is an emulation. It goes back to the days of the mainframe and the mini computer where you would log in with a dumb terminal, and all this software is just pretending it's a dumb terminal. Much like your web browser, while a little bit smarter, is just an interface to something in the background. This is really just a screen and a keyboard to a computer in the background, or in the case of local terminals, a process in the background. All right, so here I am typing a command to try to communicate with the server that I was looking for, and it does go a little bit farther. But do realize a few things about the command line here. Notice the command copy, and yeah, I use SFTP when for this particular model it's SCP for secure copy. So I could quickly go in, as you can see, and edit that. But as I was saying, they are separated by spaces. Remember, command lines are a series of words, sort of, separated by spaces. And then you press enter, and it goes through the whole thing. Unfortunately, the Windows, or actually the Linux machine I was communicating with and the Cisco router just can't agree on how to do secure protocols, so it just doesn't really work. But that's not the point of this video, is it? Okay, guys, that's going to wrap this up. Command lines are full of opportunities to make mistakes, but fortunately, with the command line, you can kind of work around that. You've got the tab key to help you to keep you from making mistakes to begin with, and the history to help you go back and fix those mistakes. Don't retype and make new mistakes over and over again. All right, if you like this, click subscribe, etc. And comments. Yeah. Thanks for watching.